Hey everybody, Andre here, and today I want to talk about the top 5 things that music theory educators need to stop saying. Before we go any further, I just want you to know that I'm not calling anybody out, I'm not attacking anybody. These are just my opinions and from experience. So I teach at the college level, I teach undergraduate level theory and also some graduate level courses. I hear these things come up very often, and they kind of make me a little crazy. So maybe that's the alternate title, top 5 things that music theory people say that make me crazy. But here are the top 5 in no particular order. I am going to save the worst one, in my opinion, to the end. But here we go. If you agree, if you disagree, sound off in the comments, and maybe you have some experience with these things as well. So here we go, the top 5 things. Number 5 is saying something sounds good because of a reason. And this seems so simple, but at its core, in music theory, what I believe should be the most important thing is that if you're teaching somebody about music, you should teach them the tools for how to interpret something, but you shouldn't interpret it for them. That's another kind of lesson. That's another kind of class. That's more of a performance practice kind of thing, more of like a music philosophy. But like having a major chord doesn't necessarily mean it sounds good, right? A 9 chord doesn't mean it sounds good. A minor chord, whatever. These are just little elements. The context of something can help, create a certain sound, but at the end of the day, your job as a music theory education, my job as a music theory educator is not to tell my students how to feel the music. It is to, unpack the different components of a piece of music and then make their own informed decisions, because we all hear music differently. That's the wonderful thing about this art form, right? We all hear music very differently. I like to be challenged when I listen to music. I don't necessarily like easy listening type things. It just bores me. But someone else might love that kind of easy listening thing and hate challenging music. There's a lot of ebb and flow. There's a lot of give and take there, and everybody hears and perceives music differently. So I really believe that it is not the job of a music theory educator to tell someone how to hear something. And you might think that, oh, but saying something, oh, it sounds good, that's such a benign thing. Well, maybe. I definitely feel like I've let it slip in my classroom. Oh, I play that chord. Oh, that sounds awesome. But really, that's not very responsible, because then you're sort of imparting your own biases on your students, and that's not great either. Of course, that's unavoidable sometimes, but really we should strive to give our students the objective facts, the tools that they need to then use those tools to unpack the music in their own way. That will really lead to the best possible results. Number 4 is explaining something shouldn't be done without saying why it shouldn't be done. And the best example of that I can think of is parallel fifths and octaves, right? We've all been through that. We've all told our students, oh, you shouldn't do parallel fifths and octaves, among other things that we tend to say are, should be avoided in our part writing, in our harmony classes. But so often we don't actually tell our students why. And I particularly find this when I have students coming from like AP theory, and they get in and they say, oh, but we're told not to do these, but so many people do it anyway. And so, you have to explain that it's coming from a particular practice, it's from a particular time period, from a particular region of the world, and of course, like modern music has tons of parallel fifths and octaves, and it's just, there are nuances, and the nuances are complicated, and very often we don't talk about those nuances. So it's really important that we do get into those specifics, because the students, they're not stupid, right? The students will understand, the students will listen, and the students will take that information in. So it's really important to go that extra mile and explain. If you're going to say that you're not allowed to do XYZ in this class, you should give the reason for why. So, like the parallel stuff, that goes back to counterpoint practices, right? The structural intervals, the consonant intervals, dissonant intervals, they all have function. That's where the parallel stuff comes from, right? So it's that's just one of many examples, but explaining something shouldn't be done or saying something shouldn't be done without saying why is definitely a big thing that comes up in my life, and I really want to make sure that people stop doing that. It kind of deals with this whole concept of absolutes versus trends, which I'll come up to. I'll tackle that in a little bit. But it's like music theory is not absolute. It's just kind of talking about certain things that tend to happen, and we've been able to codify certain things because they have recurred so many times in different kinds of music, so that there's like a pattern that can be traced. And so there's reasons for why things are done a certain way, quote unquote. And then back to the parallel fifths and octaves. What if you're talking about like Bach or whatever, and you see, oh, there's a parallel fifth right there. I thought we're not supposed to do that. And then if you didn't explain about where all that comes from, then you're like, ugh. Now what? What are you supposed to do when you get to that spot? Well, we're not allowed to do this except for when reasons. It's challenging, very challenging. So that's the number 4 thing. Explaining something shouldn't be done without giving the reason why. Number 3 is saying that certain chords and certain scales only appear in a certain way. I have a couple of examples of this. So the most common for me, the thing that drives me crazy, puts me on a soapbox is, and again, I don't mean to be calling out AP music theory teachers, but so often the people who are coming into my undergraduate level classes who have taken AP theory, and we get to this topic, and they're like, wait a minute. I've been told that the Neapolitan only happens in first inversion. And I'm thinking, like, who says that? That's crazy. Yes, the Neapolitan chord often occurs in first inversion because of the voice leading that comes out of it, why it wants to go to the dominant, sure. But it doesn't always happen in first inversion. That's insane. One of the most famous pieces of all time, the Beethoven Für Elise, right at the end of the C section, there's a Neapolitan chord, there's a B flat chord in root position. It's right there. It's right there, and you're saying that it only happens in first inversion. It doesn't make any sense. I can think of countless examples of that particular chord happening not only in first inversion. So yeah, that kind of language is just very irresponsible, because then it perpetuates this idea of certain things can only be certain ways, can only be presented in certain ways. The other thing that I can think of off the top of my head is like the melodic minor scale. We're taught that, yes, natural minor is just the relative of the major, and then the harmonic minor has the raised 7th on the way up and on the way down, and the melodic minor has the raised 6th and 7th on the way up, but on the way down it must go back to natural minor. But then you get to a piece, and then you have the raised 6th and raised 7th on the way down in a scale, and it's just like, what have we been told? It's just BS, right? It's meaningless. So it's like a simple language can change that and can alleviate a lot of confusion down the line. Instead of saying the melodic minor can only be done going ascending with the raised 6th and 7th, and on the way down as the natural, instead say, oftentimes the melodic minor scale will appear in an ascending fashion, but not always, right? Again, that's what I said before, the absolutes versus trends. It's just dealing with absolutes in music theory is just very irresponsible, because there's just hundreds of thousands of millions of pieces of music that have been written over centuries in one particular style, and it's just like, no, I'm sorry, there's different ways of doing stuff. It's just, that's just it's not, we have to stop dealing in absolutes for that kind of thing. And that segues directly into my number 2, which is only looking at composers, like 5 composers from a certain time period, from a certain region, and from a certain skin color, and from a certain gender, right? So the Beethoven, the Bach, the Mozart, the Haydn. There are more composers than those 4, the Schubert, right? Like, we just and I'm guilty of this. I'm not gonna excuse myself, right? I am my courses where I teach have a certain objective that I have to get done. And that objective is very much focused on a Eurocentric form of music thinking, music theory, an approach to music in general. But I mean, there's good reason for that, right? A lot of treatises came from the European style, so we have a lot of text and we have a lot of writing on music that we are aware of, especially in the Western world. I mean, in the Eastern part of the world, it's completely different. So we have to take that with a grain of salt. You know, it's not just those Germanic composers, right? It's not just the European style of thinking. There's more out there. But let's say, for example, that you're in my shoes and you are teaching a course. You have certain objectives that you have to get done, and those objectives are teaching this kind of tonal harmony, functional harmony approach to music, which, you know, is probably the most common for our Western world of thinking, right? There are more than just those 5 composers, those 4 composers. And even in Europe, I mean, there's more than just Austria and Germany. There's France, there's Italy, there's Russia, there's Hungary, it goes on and on, on and on. How many countries are there in Europe? There's so much more room for picking rep, and it doesn't have to be all men either, right? There are amazing female composers from the classical period, from the Romantic period. I mean, we got Clara Schumann, we got Fanny Mendelssohn, Amy Beach, Cecile Chaminade, Mel Bonis. There's 5 right there. So yeah, you choose your 5 from before, the Bach, the Beethoven, the Mozart, the Haydn, the Brahms, Schubert, whatever, and then you pick 5 female composers, and there you go. And then you have a nice balance. And there's just more. And they're all white, right? There are African American composers, there are black composers. Think about Chevalier de Saint-Georges, maybe Harry Burleigh, Margaret Bonds, William Grant Still. We have lots more, right? So the point is that when we're teaching music theory concepts to our students, and we want them to get the big picture, be able to take these concepts and apply them to a wide range of music, even if you're just focused on this Eurocentric style, there's a wide range of rep that you can choose from a wide, diverse range of composers. We have to stop perpetuating this idea of, oh, we should study only these genius master composers because, well, that's just what we've been doing in tradition, gosh darn it. It's just not right. It's not right. Especially in 2023. Come on, give it a rest. You know, we should be open and willing to explore the different music that's out there. So if you're a music theory educator and you're still perpetuating this idea that we should only be studying the music of 5 white German people, no offense to white German people at all, but there's more out there. There's just more out there, and it's just irresponsible as an educator to continue perpetuating this idea. So there you go. And finally, my number one most frustrating thing that some music theory educators say is that X thing doesn't exist. And man, this really sets me off, because what a strange way to perceive the world in general. You know, there's so much music out there. There's no way that you, and I'm talking you, anyone, me, you, anybody can listen to every single piece of music that has ever been written or will be written. Not possible. So unless you are omnipotent, you cannot know everything that has been done. And this, again, this goes back to those generalities thing. Like, yes, a lot of music is in 4/4. A lot of music is in 3/4. A lot of music is in a key. A lot of music uses chords. But does music have to be in 4/4? Does it have to be in 3/4? Does it have to have chords? Does it have to have sound? These are real music philosophy questions. And, just start. One of the greatest things that ever happened to me in my music education was reading the work of Cage. And just like opening my mind to what is possible, what can be perceived as music. And I wish that more people would be open, because what ends up happening is that I go to a concert and, no disrespect to anyone who's putting on stuff, but you end up sitting there and everything sounds the same. And that's unfortunate, because there's this idea of what's normal and what is music. And everything that's not that, oh, we're not going to talk about that. We're not even going to acknowledge its existence. I have a few colleagues, a few friends of mine who went to see a Roomful of Teeth concert, and they've talked about that experience. And, they were so upset about it that they left the performance because it was so shocking, it was so crazy. And that's awesome. That's awesome that it made you feel so strongly that you were like, I just can't do this. And some people might interpret that as oh, this isn't music. This is just garbage. I can't deal with this. But no, in some ways, if you think about it another way, that's art, because it made you feel something. It made you feel anger, made you feel frustration, but it still made you feel something. And at the end of the day, what is art? Art is something that is created to get some feeling out of you, something. Maybe get the absence of feeling. I don't know. It's such a nebulous topic, and so I can go on, but going back to how it relates to music, anything's possible. Anything is possible, and when you just shut down somebody. If you've been following my channel, I had a music theory subreddit reaction video last year, or even 2 years ago. I don't remember at this point, but I saw there was a post that said my teacher said that 18.8 doesn't exist, and really it bothers me, because how does a teacher know that it doesn't exist? And then I went into Sibelius and I made 18.8, and it was right there. Oh, there you go, it exists. So we have to be more mindful about the language that we use as music theory educators, because what are we trying to teach our students? Are we trying to funnel them in and think that there's only what's in this box is what's perceived as music, and everything outside of it is either wrong or garbage or not right or not good or all this BS? And it's irresponsible language, and I hear it too often, and yeah, there you go. So those are the 5 things that I think that music theory educators should stop saying. And maybe this goes outside of music theory as well, but I hope this video was interesting for you. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. I would love to hear from you. I would love for you to sound off in the comments and react to what I say, because that's the beauty of this forum, this online forum here, is that we can talk about these things, and hopefully meaningful discussion can help us to make our community a better place and make a better world for our students. And then, if we raise a generation of super inclusive minded folks, we can have such incredible progress, not only in music, but frankly in the world at large. So yeah, that's where I stand, and I hope this was useful for you. Please like the video if you liked what I said. Feel free to dislike the video if you hated what I said, but do subscribe to the channel. I'd appreciate it. I'm trying to grow, and I'm trying to have some quality content out there for you in many different forms. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. I hope you have an awesome day. Bye.